Hi lovely people. Today I want to talk to you about something that's taken me 2 months for me to be ready to talk to you about. As you know, I recently celebrated my youngest second birthday, and it's been a beautiful year filled with wonder and amazing adventures. But there was also one day that definitely left a dent on that perfect year, and that's exactly what I want to discuss today. I will tell you the story quickly and then I'll tell you what it was all about. But it was 2 months ago, the night before my daughter's birthday party, and my husband and I wanted to go out to celebrate a friend's birthday party. So we called my mother-in-law. We told her to come over and take care of the kids. So she came. We wanted to feed the kids before leaving. It was Saturday night. So we laid out some pizza, some homemade pizza, and started feeding all three of them, including my youngest, who was sitting on his high chair. So that night I fed him a little slice of pizza, and as he chewed, I was watching him. His body felt a limp to the left, and he rolled back his eyes, and 3 to 5 seconds later he started shaking his whole body, both sides. His eyes were not making any eye contact. He was completely out of it. I picked him up really quickly and I told my husband to please call 911. It was, of course, a seizure. I'd never seen one, but that's exactly what it had looked like, textbook, right? And I picked him up in my arms and I watched his skin turn from pink to purple. I thought he might be choking with some of the pizza. I didn't know what to do. I started breathing into his mouth. My husband was frantic, speaking to 911, asking them what on earth to do. And they just told him to put the child on his side, preferably on the floor, and let him ride out the seizure. I was holding him in my arms and I did not want to let go of him. As I did that, I never in my life as a mother felt so hopeless or scared. I didn't know what to do. I visualized the worst case scenarios. I didn't know if my son would be okay neurologically. I didn't know if he would wake up. I didn't know how he would wake up. And what lay ahead for me on the other side of that seizure. It took 3 to 5 minutes of him shaking, my husband running around the house, my children asking if he was going to be okay, me praying frantically. And he eventually stopped shaking. And that was just as the ambulance was arriving in my house. It was a snowy day, so I was surprised that it came so fast. They knocked on the door. My son was not waking up. He was limp. He was not moving his arms and legs. He was not opening his eyes. He was just letting out a very soft whimper with irregular breathing. Just thinking about it now, it was horrible. It was horrible and terrifying. And they took him away from me. They took him into the ambulance. My husband followed in the car. I climbed onto the ambulance and I couldn't see him because he was facing away from my seat. But I saw that they put the little stickies all over his body to look at his heart. They poked his foot to look at his blood sugar, took his temperature, took his blood pressure, and he was crying. That whimper went all the way to a scream and a screech, and he wouldn't stop crying. And I thought, hey, let's sing to him Itsy Bitsy Spider, his favorite song. And I sang the Itsy Bitsy to him at the top of my lungs. It looked like a movie moment, right? The first responders were looking at me like I was crazy. But he stopped crying. He was suddenly quiet, which was a really good sign because I was like, his brain is working. But he wasn't opening his eyes. He was not moving his limbs. When he eventually opened his eyes, the first responder who was actually in training forgot to tell me. But when I found out, I was really happy. We got to the hospital about 5 to 10 minutes later, and a nurse immediately took his temperature again and told me that he was at 39.5 Celsius, which is a very significant fever. She uttered the word febrile seizure. And I have heard of febrile seizures before. I just never ever thought that it could happen to my child. I always thought, that stuff happens to someone else. So clearly his temperature had peaked unsuspectedly. I had no idea he had a fever and caused this horrible, terrifying, completely out of the blue seizure that I was completely not prepared for. I've taken CPR courses, first responders. We've talked about scrapes and cuts and heart arrest and choking, but we never really talked about seizures. I did not know how to respond, and this is why I am speaking to you today. If you're watching this video, I want you to spread the word. Of course, after this happened, I went on to Dr. Google and found out that 2 to 5% of children under the age of 5 experience a febrile seizure, one or more, and that my son has a 20% of having a recurring febrile seizure. That makes it pretty common. That makes it a pretty big number and something all of us parents and caregivers should be aware of. And that's the reason why I'm speaking to you today, because febrile seizures are real. They can happen, they will continue to happen, and we should all be informed. So I'm going to drop a link in the comments below. I'd appreciate it if you could read up. If your child has had a febrile seizure, share your experience with us and let other people know that it is scary, but that 99% of the time or more, children end up being okay, which is the big light at the end of the tunnel after that terrifying moment. If your child hasn't had a febrile seizure, read up. Be informed if you have a young child, and spread the word to other parents. We need to know how to be prepared. So if the moment comes, if you have one of those 2 to 5% of children who end up experiencing it, I want you to be able to approach it with a cool, level head and keep your child safe. The main key messages that I learned is that if your child has a febrile seizure, they're going to be shaking all over their body, not only on one side. That's a more concerning kind of seizure. Okay, the other thing I learned is that you want to put them in an unobstructed, safe place, preferably on the floor. No fabric, no toys. You want them to be able to write it out. You want to call 911. You never know what can happen, so you might as well have first responders with you. And you don't want to put anything into your child's mouth. I was so desperate that I started breathing into my child's mouth, thinking that maybe he had something obstructed and that he needed air as his skin was changing colors. That was not right. Please read below, share this video, and let's be prepared for something that clearly is all too frequent. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a lovely day. Bye.